Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. And this is going to be episode number 3 of a series where I'm building this rock solid split top Roubo step by step. And I'm using antique heart pine and some ash, and I'm using Benchcrafted hardware. It's been such a cool process. I never knew building a workbench could be an inspiring thing to do, but it's been really cool and a lot of fun. Hope you all stick around and check it out. Well, so the first step in this is I have to lay out the tenon with my marking gauge. And I think I went about 1.25 inches deep. Then once I have a nice crisp line, I'll lock down this little cutting guide for my skill saw, since that big slab of wood ain't gonna fit on any of my other saws. And I'll just run several passes of it at the proper depth. A little shy of the depth, because I'm gonna clean it up with the router afterwards. I just kind of whack it out with the hammer, clean it up a little bit with the chisel. Then I set up on that same jig, I now run it with my router. And that's a top bearing straight cutting bit. I use my gauge to set the depths for the mortise. Go ahead and cut those in now for the bottom of the mortise, set it again, check both sides to make sure it's good. And just run it on there. And that's some sexy footage of a slow motion drill press. Okay, so last night, or later on in the day yesterday, I went ahead and glued on the dog hole strip back here. Once I had this all figured out and laid out, I got my end block cut, got it popped on the end, it's tendoned onto the main body of this bench on this side. Once that was in, I was able to glue in my dog hole strip, and I don't think I videoed that. If I did, I'll probably be showing that footage right now. But anyway, so after that dried up, I came back out last night and I went ahead and plowed out this channel. This is the channel that I followed, basically the instructions off of the Benchcrafted template here. I just did it. I just went ahead and took my skill saw and ran it that way, and without this end laminate on there, I flipped it up on edge and I ran it that way. And then I just basically took my chisel and just chopped it out of the corner there. It was pretty cool. I didn't video that either. It was late. It was like a last minute thing I thought I'd go ahead and do. They give you a full scale template to go with here. And this edge is the face of the bench, and there's their 1.5 inch front laminate, where mine is 1 3/4. If I was just to flush this up here on the outside, that would throw the center hole for the screw off. It'd throw it, I guess, too far that way. So what I've decided to do was, I think all I'm going to do is shift it over, and I'm going to line the inside of their front laminate with the inside of mine, which will shift this screw over 1/4 inch and should make it just right. Because when it's all said and done, this thing's got to travel down this cavity right here, right? And this is where the dog hole goes on the sliding block, and that has to be in line with the other ones. So in case in the future somebody's watching this and they're about to do that and they have a different thickness front laminate, this may be helpful, because I almost screwed up and that would have been an awful lot of work in this little end cap to throw away. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and mark all this stuff out now and start drilling this hole. Oh, and I also have to set up my router. I'm going to set up my router to clean this up, since I kept it probably a 1/16 or 1/8 back from my pencil line. I'm going to set my router in a straight edge, and I'm going to clean that up and flatten off the bottom of that hole. So throughout this entire build, I would do rough cuts with whatever saw, band saw, skill saw, and I'd always trim it up with my router bit. Again, that's that same top bearing straight cutting bit. And I only happen to have a 1 inch bit, so deeper holes like this, I had to start with a template, and then once I got a nice smooth edge on the edge, then I would ride the bearing onto that. Now I'm drilling out the holes to the bolt holes for the tail vise. And this is the through hole for the screw. So as you could probably tell from my cut, my tenon, I made it too long. I tried to make it the full width of this side of the bench here. And I should have stopped it back over there. I mean, I don't think it's any big deal. It's not in the way, but I did have to chisel down this corner a little bit. But I think that'll probably be okay. Like so. Oh, that worked pretty nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to shim these up a little bit. My bench is like 3 9/16 thick. Gosh, I've got to elevate it just a tiny little bit. Looks like my screw is running straight with my joint. Let's see, get this out of the way. With that nut block centered in my hole, that looks to be right in line with the other dog holes. I think that looks great. Very happy. Okay, so next thing that has to happen is this is my front laminate, which is gonna turn over like this and be glued onto here. And this is my end block, my end cap. I'm going to do a dovetail joint between the front laminate and the end block. And I'm following, Benchcrafted has in their website, they have an article that was written by Fine Home Building magazine a number of years ago, and it describes how I'm gonna do this right now. So I've never done this before, but it looked like a really great way to do it. This board right now is it's 1 3/4 inch thick and about 6 feet long. Very difficult thing to try to handle and cut dovetails in regularly. So I'm gonna do it on the bandsaw over there and then transfer the marks over to the end of the end cap and cut the sockets into that with my router. So router and chisels and stuff. So I'm just laying this out. I think I came in 5/16 of an inch in from each edge, which will be the start of the cut on the 2 outside ones. Then I simply found the center of the piece, and then I did 1/2 of 5/16 each way on that. So I basically centered up the 2 dovetails. Actually, in the magazine article, they call them condor tails because they're so big. But so that's all I'm doing here is just laying it all out, getting ready to take it over the bandsaw. Really is a great way to do it, that bandsaw. Makes something that would have been rather difficult pretty easy, actually. Okay, so let me explain how I'm doing this. So I have a piece of MDF, this one right here. Let me get this out of it. This one right here. Now that's cut at the same 1 6 angle that my little my dovetails are laid out here. Or at least, yeah, it should be 1 6. It should be a 1 6. What I did is I screwed it to another piece of MDF just as a backboard, and I'm going to lay, so this is on one side is just a straight square edge, and that's going to go up against the fence. And my board is going to lay on top of this. I'm going to clamp it to the lower piece of MDF, and I'm going to run it up here. I'm going to reference it off of this top corner up here. Right here, it's touching the end of that first piece of MDF, and that should be my reference point. Then I'm going to get my clamp down on this end, and I'm going to clamp this board onto here to keep it nice. And because this is a 6 foot long board, the other end of the board, I've got it on one of those outfeed roller, basically, type of a thing. So anyway, the idea is here, so I set this, like I'm gonna set it this way here. I'm basically about 5/16 of an inch in from the edge of the board to that face of the blade. And with the 2x4 I'm trying to rip here, or trying to dovetail, it's flushed up with the reference point on the end, and I've got my fence locked in, and that board is now sitting at an angle. So I should be able to run this through the bandsaw, bring it right to my baseline, unclamp the board, flip it, lock it back down without moving the fence, and I should be able to cut the opposite line, that one, on the other side. And then I'll set it a second time for the inner lines, and I should be able to cut, flip it, and cut again. So I believe it'll be done with just 2 setups, well, 4 setups, but just 2 sets of the fence, and I should have all 4 lines cut. And even if they don't follow my lines here exactly, they should be all exactly the same distance from the center of the board because I'm setting the fence twice. Anyway, that's what I'm hoping for, and I'm about to cut this one right now and give it a try. Let's see how we do. Yeah, so this turned out to be such a simple way of doing this. I mean, it was really, took 10 minutes to make the jig. You clamp it on there as long as you set it right. And I don't know if I set it right, but the end of the board references right there where the corner meets the MDF. And I just made sure I sat that shallow corner at the same spot each time. And I mean, it hit dead on. They came out perfectly centered and all perfect angles. It was really cool. I think I wobbled a little bit there, but luckily I wobbled in the right direction. I was able to clean it up with the chisel pretty good. Now I'm just squaring it up with my little hand saw. That's just a little kind of a cheapy Dovetail saw. Nothing special. I got it from one of the big box stores. Yep, just cleaning up a little bit with my chisel. And I got to get in there with my coping saw too. I took a bunch of slices on the bandsaw after I got the angles cut. And now I'm just cutting out all those little pieces and then going to proceed to chisel for a while till it all gets, the shoulders get all nice and flattened off and everything. It was pretty cool. Okay, so I made a stupid rookie mistake for sure. Well, me being a rookie, especially with dovetails. So what I did was I marked the baseline, the entire depth of my end cap. And the original intention was to only have the dovetails come in and leave probably a 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch here on the end. And I didn't do that. I screwed up. But I don't think it's the end of the world, really. I'm going to do it so these dovetails come through the end of the ash, and I think it might look kind of cool. And so you'll see the triangular side of the dovetails here, and then you're going to see the square end of the dovetails over here. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't. I'm a little disappointed in myself because that's not what I wanted, but at the same time, it may look kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to take about half of these guys out of here. So let's see. This is the inside. So this is going to be my top right here. Okay, so I'm going to cut a shoulder here, and I'm going to take about half of these dovetails away. So in the end, we'll see that little piece right there on the end. So I set my marking gauge halfway in the middle, like so. Yeah, so I'll just saw down through, keeping just a tad shy of where I want to be. I'll leave the line, in other words, and once again clean it up with my router, because I'm much better with a router than I am with a hand saw or anything. Of course, then I'll clean it up a tad more with my chisel. And they didn't fit too bad for my first time. Not bad at all. Well, though I screwed up a few different ways, I think it's going to come out all right for my first set of dovetails. When I realized I cut that baseline at the wrong spot, in fact, there's my mark from yesterday that I was checking. I cut it in the wrong spot. I'd have changed out this board, but that's the last board I've got for this thing. So I decided to go ahead and go with it. I'm just doing a little final cleaning up now. I think it's going to be all right. Couple little gaps, but from a first try, not too bad. All right, so the last thing I've got to do to that end cap now is drill in the two lags that come in from the end of the end cap and go into that main body at the top. Now the interesting thing is when you put these on, you do not glue that tenon in place, because you want to allow for expansion and contraction of the of all that wood that's part of this top. So you drill in two lag bolts, and on one of them you actually drill a slotted hole, which I think is very interesting. And it wasn't that easy to do either. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't that easy. So one bolt goes straight in, and you'll see me doing it here. And the other one, I set the two, I laid out the center of the bolt, and then I moved it each way, a little bit, probably, probably 1/8 of an inch in either direction. So I basically spaced out two holes about 1/4 of an inch, which resulted in a slot. And so as that bench top would expand and contract with weather conditions and whatnot, it allowed it to slide back and forth on that bolt as opposed to splitting the top. So this was a slow going thing. That tiny little brad point that comes out of the end of that drill bit is only so deep, and the holes are so close together, you can only drill so deep before you basically erase the other brad point. You want to hit that brad point center each time, so you're not chewing up with bad edges on your hole, because in the end you want a nice oval shaped hole. So I probably didn't explain that very well, but that's what I was trying to do. So I would drill about 1/8 of an inch, and so then once I got the whole thing drilled out, then I did basically the same process with I think that's a 3/8 bolt, 3/8 drill bit rather, for a 3/8 shank bolt. And now's the time to finally get ready to start putting this thing together. There's a lot of work in these benches, that's for sure. But it's very enjoyable work too, though. A lot of precision. It's not going to look like some kind of a precision thing when it's done. It's going to look like a big hulking bench. But there's a lot of precision that goes into this. This is a functioning bench. It's like a big tool with moving parts and everything. And when you're mixing wood and steel, that wood's got to be just right, because steel is unforgiving. So if you want everything to work nice, everything's got to fit just as perfect as you can possibly get it. I think that was part of the fun of this too. Using this old antique-y looking wood and trying to be so precise with it. I think it was very cool. I really encourage anybody that's thought about doing this or saw them around and thought, hey, what a cool thing to have. It's a cool thing to have. It really is. I encourage you to give it a try if you've never tried it before. A few clamps on there. Of course, I always put a little salt in between the two layers I'm laminating too. It helps keep that glue from sliding around. Here's a little shot of it glued up, and you can see that angle, that slotted hole right there too, right there. And that's as it is today. Still not finished, but it's getting there. Folks, I really appreciate you all watching. I really do, especially you folks that stick it out to the very end. Anyway, if you all dig this sort of thing, I'm going to be building more woodworking videos, more guitar videos. If you dig this sort of thing, how about you give me a like and subscribe? Anyway, you all take care of yourselves, and you all have a great day.